My wife's friend told me congratulations, even though we're not expecting a baby. I thought my wife was pregnant, but the truth was a secret she was keeping from both of us. Hey everyone, before we get into the video, don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button if you want more stories just like this. Thanks for the support. My name is Michael and I'm 32 years old. For the last 5 years, I've been married to the love of my life, Isabella. Our life together was, for the most part, a picture of contentment. We had a small but cozy home in the suburbs, 2 ridiculous golden retrievers who thought they were lapdogs, and a comfortable rhythm that felt like a warm blanket on a cold night. Isabella was my anchor, her laughter the soundtrack to my best days. At the center of our social universe was her lifelong best friend, Amber. Amber was a force of nature, loud, vibrant, and with a flair for the dramatic that could be both entertaining and exhausting, depending on the day. She and Isabella had been inseparable since kindergarten, and their bond was a language all its own, filled with inside jokes and knowing glances that I, as the husband, was sometimes on the outside of. I never minded, though. Their friendship was a core part of who Isabella was, and I loved her for it, including all the chaotic, Amber-filled parts. The trouble began on a perfectly ordinary Saturday during a backyard barbecue at our house. The sun was high, the air smelled of grilled burgers and freshly cut grass, and the sound of our friends' laughter mingled with the yapping of our dogs. I was manning the grill, feeling a sense of simple, uncomplicated happiness when Amber appeared at my side, a sly, knowing grin plastered across her face. She held a glass of iced tea in one hand and used the other to tap my arm conspiratorially. I expected another one of her loud anecdotes or a request for a well-done burger. Instead, she leaned in close, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that cut through the party noise like a knife. She told me, "Congratulations." My mind went blank. Congratulations for what? I asked, mentally scanning my recent accomplishments. I hadn't gotten a promotion, I hadn't won the lottery. Amber's grin widened, her eyes sparkling with the thrill of knowing something I didn't. She said it was for the new addition, that she was just so happy for us both, and that she couldn't believe Isabella had managed to keep it a secret for so long. She winked, patted my shoulder, and sashayed away before I could form a single coherent question. I stood there, spatula in hand, the burger sizzling forgotten behind me. A new addition. The phrase echoed in the sudden silence of my own head. My eyes found Isabella across the yard, where she was laughing with a neighbor, her face lit up by the afternoon sun. She looked beautiful, radiant even. And in that moment, under the weight of Amber's words, a tiny, terrifying seed of doubt was planted in the fertile soil of my mind. The rest of the barbecue passed in a blur. I went through the motions, smiling, flipping burgers, making small talk, but my mind was a whirlwind of chaotic thoughts. Every time I looked at Isabella, I saw her through a new lens. Was that a glow of happiness or the glow of early pregnancy? The seed Amber had planted was beginning to sprout, its tendrils wrapping around my confidence and squeezing. That night, after the last guest had left and the house was quiet again, the doubt began to fester. I found myself watching Isabella as she got ready for bed. She hummed a tune while she brushed her teeth, completely unaware of the storm raging inside me. I wanted to ask her. The words were right there, on the tip of my tongue. "Is there something you want to tell me?" But I couldn't. What if Amber was just being Amber, stirring up drama for the sake of it? Accusing my wife of hiding a pregnancy felt like a massive betrayal, a sign that I didn't trust her. So I stayed silent, and my silence became a quiet, corrosive acid. The next day, I began to notice things. Small details I would have otherwise ignored. A week ago, Isabella had turned down a glass of her favorite red wine, claiming she had a headache. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now, it felt like a glaring clue. She'd been more tired lately, falling asleep on the couch during our movie nights, something she rarely did. I remembered her mentioning feeling a bit queasy in the mornings, blaming it on a stomach bug that was going around her office. All these isolated incidents suddenly clicked together, forming a narrative I was terrified to believe. My heart ached with a confusing mix of potential joy and profound hurt. Why wouldn't she tell me? Were we not ready? Was she scared of my reaction? We had talked about kids, of course, in that vague, someday kind of way. We had agreed we'd start trying in another year or two. Had she changed her mind and decided to go it alone? The thought felt impossible, yet the evidence was mounting. Driven by a gnawing anxiety I couldn't shake, I did something I never thought I would do. I went looking for proof. I started with her purse, a place I rarely ventured. Tucked inside a small zippered compartment beneath a tangled mess of lip balm and receipts, I found it. A small, white paper receipt from a pharmacy. My hands trembled as I read it. One item, a home pregnancy test. The date on the receipt was from 3 weeks ago. My stomach dropped. This was it. This was the confirmation. But as I stared at the slip of paper, a fragment of my logical brain fought through the panic. The receipt didn't say what the result was. It was just proof of the test. Still, it was enough. The secrecy of it was what hurt the most. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to her, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing, feeling a chasm open between us. I had to know more. I had to understand. The next morning, fueled by a desperate need for answers, I decided to dig deeper. I waited until Isabella was in the shower, the sound of running water providing cover for my digital snooping. I opened her laptop, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, feeling a fresh wave of guilt. This was an invasion of her privacy, a line I never imagined I would cross. But the words from Amber, the receipt, the subtle changes in her behavior, they had created a monster of suspicion inside me, and it had to be fed. I started with her browser history. What I found sent my heart into a frantic, painful drumbeat. There it was, a trail of searches that painted a damning picture. Best maternity genes for early pregnancy. Early pregnancy symptoms before missed period. How to announce a pregnancy to husband. Each search query was a fresh stab to the chest. I clicked on her social media. Her Instagram Explore page was a curated collection of adorable baby clothes, minimalist nurseries, and accounts run by momfluencers. It was a digital vision board for motherhood. It felt definitive. The final nail in the coffin came when I logged into our shared bank account, something I rarely did since we handled our finances separately for the most part. I scanned the recent transactions, and there it was, a recurring monthly charge of $24.99 to a company called VitaBloom. A quick search revealed VitaBloom's specialty, high-end prenatal vitamins. The subscription had started 2 months ago. It was over. All the pieces fit together perfectly, forming a picture of a secret life my wife was living, a life that didn't include me. The hurt was a physical thing, a heavy stone in my gut. I felt like a fool. All those nights she'd seemed distant, all those times she'd been on her phone.
She wasn't just scrolling. She was planning a future I wasn't supposed to be a part of yet. I closed the laptop, the sound of the click echoing in the quiet room like a gunshot. I had my proof. Now I had to decide what to do with it. Confrontation seemed inevitable, but a part of me, a small, stubborn part, still held on to a sliver of hope that this was all a colossal misunderstanding. But how could it be? The evidence was overwhelming. Later that day, Isabella mentioned she was meeting Amber for coffee to go over some details for a surprise. The word surprise hung in the air between us, thick with irony. I knew then I couldn't wait any longer. I had to know what this surprise was. I told her I had to run an errand, my voice flat and emotionless. As soon as she left, I got in my car and followed them. I tailed Isabella's car at a safe distance, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. My mind was a battlefield of emotions: anger, betrayal, confusion, and a deep, profound sadness warred for dominance. I felt like a character in a bad movie, the clueless husband who is the last to know. They drove to a trendy coffee shop downtown, and I parked across the street, my heart pounding in my chest. I expected them to go inside, order lattes and gossip, but they didn't. After a few minutes, they emerged, coffee cups in hand, and began walking down the street. My anxiety spiked. Where were they going? I followed them on foot, keeping a discreet distance, my hoodie pulled up to shield my face. They walked for another block before turning into a small, professional-looking office building with a frosted glass door. There was no sign, no indication of what business was conducted inside. This was it. My stomach churned. A private doctor's office? A fertility clinic? It felt too clandestine, too secretive. I found a spot in the alleyway between the buildings where I could see the entrance but remain hidden. For the next hour, I waited, every minute stretching into an eternity. I played out the confrontation in my head 100 times. What would I say? How would she react? Would she cry? Would she be angry that I'd followed her? The uncertainty was torture. I felt a perverse sense of relief when the frosted glass door finally opened and Isabella and Amber stepped back out into the sunlight. But my relief was short-lived. They weren't carrying medical files or sonogram pictures. They were holding a large black leather portfolio. And their faces weren't filled with the quiet anxiety of a medical appointment. They were beaming, their expressions alight with triumph and pure, unadulterated joy. They hugged each other tightly, a celebration of some kind. My carefully constructed theory began to crumble. This didn't look like two women celebrating a secret pregnancy. This looked like two women who had just conquered the world. I watched, completely bewildered, as they chattered excitedly, gesturing to the portfolio. I couldn't take it anymore. The suspense, the not knowing, it was worse than any truth I could imagine. I stepped out of the shadows and walked directly toward them. The smile on Isabella's face faltered as she saw me, her expression shifting from pure joy to utter confusion. I stopped in front of them, my chest heaving, my voice barely a whisper when I finally spoke. I asked her what was going on. The look on Isabella's face when I asked my question was a mixture of shock and confusion, quickly clouded by a dawning hurt as she saw the accusation in my eyes. She had no idea what I was talking about, and her genuine bewilderment only fueled my frustration. Before she could form a response, Amber stepped forward, her usual boisterous confidence completely deflated. She looked pale, her eyes wide with the dawning realization of the mess she had created. She opened her mouth, then closed it, before finally letting out a long, shaky breath. It was Amber who broke the silence, her voice quiet and stripped of its usual theatricality. She confessed. She explained that the congratulations she had offered at the barbecue had nothing to do with a baby. The new addition she was referring to was not a child, but a new business. Isabella, my wife, had been secretly working for months to launch her own high-end event planning company. The meetings she'd been having, the late nights on her laptop, the secrecy, it was all for this. The portfolio they were holding contained the final business plan and branding concepts. The meeting they had just come from was with a potential investor, an angel investor who had, just minutes before I appeared, agreed to fund Isabella's entire startup. The surprise she was planning with Amber was a party to celebrate the launch, a party where she was going to present me with the news and her new business card, proud and triumphant. As Amber's words washed over me, a tidal wave of information so different from what I had expected, my world tilted on its axis. I felt dizzy, but the biggest shock was yet to come. I thought of the prenatal vitamins, the smoking gun I had found in our bank statements. I brought it up, my voice cracking. Amber flinched and looked at Isabella, who nodded grimly. Amber explained that the subscription wasn't for Isabella. It was a gift for her older sister, who had recently discovered she was expecting and was having trouble with morning sickness. Isabella had set it up for her as a supportive gesture. The pregnancy test receipt? Amber's eyes filled with tears. She admitted that she was the one who bought it. She had been having a pregnancy scare of her own and had been too embarrassed to buy it herself, so she had asked Isabella to pick it up for her. The test was negative. The social media follows, the maternity wear searches. Isabella finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. That was market research. She was trying to understand the target demographic for one of her first potential clients, a baby moon and baby shower planning service. Every single piece of evidence I had so painstakingly gathered, every clue that had led me to this painful conclusion, was a coincidence. A perfectly orchestrated, heartbreaking series of misunderstandings, all kicked off by one thoughtless comment from a friend with a big mouth. The relief that washed over me was so powerful and so immediate that it almost brought me to my knees. It was a physical release, an unclenching of every muscle in my body that had been coiled tight with anxiety for days. But that relief was instantly engulfed by a crushing, suffocating wave of guilt. I looked at Isabella, and I saw the hurt in her eyes. It wasn't anger, it was deeper than that. It was the wound of betrayal. I had spied on her, I had doubted her, I had built an entire case against her in my mind based on flimsy evidence and a complete lack of trust. The joy of her incredible achievement, the launch of her own dream business, was now tainted, overshadowed by my profound failure as a husband. The walk back to the car was silent and heavy. Amber offered to drive separately, giving us space, her apology trailing behind her like a ribbon of shame. Once we were inside our car, the words finally came pouring out of me. I didn't make excuses, I didn't try to justify my actions, I just confessed everything. I told her about the comment at the barbecue, about the spiral of doubt it had sent me into. I told her about checking her purse, her laptop, our bank statements. I admitted to following her, my voice thick with shame as I described my ridiculous paranoid stakeout. With each admission, I felt another piece of our foundation crumble. Isabella listened in silence, staring out the window, her reflection a mask of pain. When I was finished, she finally turned to me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She told me she understood, on a logical level, how the pieces could have been misinterpreted. But she said that understanding didn't erase the hurt. She explained that she had wanted to keep the business a secret because she was scared. Scared of failing, scared of not being good enough, and scared of letting me down. She wanted to present me with a finished, successful idea, a surprise gift of a new future for us, not a work in progress that might fall apart. My lack of faith in her felt like a confirmation of her own deepest fears.
That night, the atmosphere in our home was cold and fragile. The unspoken words were louder than any argument. We slept in the same bed, but the space between us felt like a vast, empty ocean. I knew that saying "I'm sorry" wasn't enough. I had broken something fundamental, and I had no idea how to fix it. I had to earn back her trust, one painstaking moment at a time. The next few days were a delicate dance of healing. I knew I couldn't just move on and pretend it never happened. I had to show Isabella, not just tell her, that I was committed to rebuilding what I had broken. I started by sitting down with her and asking her to tell me everything about her business. Not just the glossy, investor-approved version, but the real story. I wanted to hear about her fears, her inspirations, the long nights spent designing logos and writing business plans. As she spoke, a light returned to her eyes that I hadn't realized had been missing. I saw her not just as my wife, but as this brilliant, passionate, and ambitious woman I had somehow overlooked in my own selfish panic. I became her biggest cheerleader. I spent hours reviewing her business plan, offering what little feedback I could. I celebrated every small victory with her, from the printer getting the colors just right on her business cards to securing her first official client. My enthusiasm was genuine, fueled by a desperate need to replace my doubt with my faith in her. We also had to deal with Amber. After a few days of giving us space, she showed up at our door with a letter and a bottle of ridiculously expensive champagne. The letter was a heartfelt, rambling apology, full of self-recrimination for her big mouth and the chaos it had caused. Isabella read it, then looked at me. We both knew that Amber hadn't acted out of malice, but out of clumsy excitement. Isabella decided to forgive her, but with a firm, clear boundary. Her mouth could no longer write checks that other people's relationships had to cash. Their friendship was strained, but it was mending, stronger now with a new understanding. The real work was between Isabella and me. We started having long, honest talks, sometimes late into the night. We talked about communication, about our fears, and about the pressure we put on ourselves and each other. We made a new pact. No more big secrets, even happy ones. Our partnership had to be built on a foundation of shared reality, not individual surprises. Months later, Isabella's business, Bella Eventi, was thriving. She was featured in a local magazine and her calendar was booked solid. Our marriage, too, was stronger. It had been tested in a fire I had started, and it had been forged into something more resilient. I often think back to that day at the barbecue, to that one thoughtless comment that almost derailed everything. It taught me the most important lesson of my life, that trust is not just about believing the good things, but about having the courage to ask about the bad things before you let your imagination destroy everything you hold dear.